If there is one parsha that my teachers told me as a child I was most shaykh to, it would probably be that of the Ben Sorer Umore. I was not what you call an easy kid. I had many nicknames as a child. One of those nicknames was given to me by one of my Rabbeim, Rabbi Kerish, and he used to call me number one. So I thought that was a pretty good nickname, right? If I called you number one, you'd probably take that with pride. That'd probably be a simon of, wow, I'm a pretty good guy. It took me a few months to ask him why my nickname was number one, until he told me that since the school implemented the new incident report system, that I was number one. I had number one in all the grades in the whole school of the incident reports from the teachers, okay? So I was used to my parents and my teachers telling me, if you don't shape up, one day you're going to end up, a rabbi, something like that. They used to tell me, if you keep going in the way that you're going, things aren't going to end up so great. And that's really what we say about the Ben Sorer Umore. The Psukim come and say, Ki yel ish ben sorer umore, eineno shomea b'kol aviv u'b'kol imo. You have a kid who just doesn't listen. We could all probably relate to such a thing. V'savsu bo aviv v'imo, v'otzio so el ziknei iro, v'el shar mekomo. You go, you bring him to the Beis Din. V'amru el ziknei iro, and you say, B'neinu zeh sorer umore. This kid that we got, he's a rough kid. Eineno shomea b'kolenu, zolel v'sovei. He's not listening. He's involved in bad things. He's going after wine and meat and money, and he's really not a great kid right now. But we see, Chazal tell us, that it's not the now that is the problem. That the Ben Sorer Umore, as it stands, is not really chayiv misa. He's not really chayiv, liable for the punishment that is coming to him. But rather, we say, nidon al shem sofo. He's judged based on where he's going to end up. Like, my teachers, if you keep going, not that I was so bad as a kid, but you could see in a kid that they have certain midos, they have certain character traits, that listen, if you don't shape up, I know where this movie ends. I know what it's going to be like. You're going to end up in a bad place. You're going to end up with bad people. You're going to end up doing bad things. So that's what the Ben Sorer Umore is. So now, if you think about it like that, you would think that there's probably no more shaykh parsha in the entire Torah, halacha l'maisa, than a Ben Sorer Umore. No? Kids don't listen. It's a thing. Kids come and they take your things, and they don't listen. You tell them to not do that, and they go and do it. And you would think that of all of the halachas, this is like one everyone can relate to. They've got, some sort of Ben Sorer Umore. They know the guy at least down the block, he's a Ben Sorer Umore. The other person's kid, that guy, has got a rough kid. And yet, Chazal tell us that because of the many qualifications that are needed for a kid to be a Ben Sorer Umore, it needs to be that the parents, they look alike, they're the same height, they have the same voice, they come and they say, B'koleinu. Chazal learn out from there all these different qualifications. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Perek Ben Sorer Umore, goes through all of these different qualifications that are needed in order for a person to be labeled a full-on halachic Ben Sorer Umore, chayev, the death penalty. Says the Gemara that a Ben Sorer Umore lo haya v'lo asid lios. Guess what? It's never happened. It's never happened. It never has happened, and it never will happen. It could never be that you have such a kid who is that bad with the parents being the exact qualifications needed for the child to be chayav the death penalty. So you might ask, what's going on in the parsha? Why is it even here? So Chazal say, drosh umekabel schar. Go and learn Torah and go and engross yourself in the limud, and then finally, you'll get some schar from learning the parsha. So very nice. It's never happened. The Ben Sorer Umore, Baruch Hashem, we're safe. It's never been done. And yet, you look 3 lines down in the Gemara, and comes along Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, ani ra'isi v'yoshati al kivro. You're telling me that a Ben Sorer Umore never happened? I saw it. I saw him. And I sat on his kever. I sat next to his matzeva, and I said, this is the Ben Sorer Umore. So seemingly we have a machlokes in Mitzias in the Gemara of whether or not this Ben Sorer Umore happened or never happened. You have Rabbi Yehuda, you have Rabbi Yochanan. Which one is it? Did it happen or did it not happen? So comes along many of the Mefarshei Tanakh, many of the Mefarshei Gemara. You have the Rabbeinu Bechaya, you have the Chasam Sofer. You have many who have come and tried to answer up this seeming stira that is taking place in the Gemara. Has it happened or has it not happened? So Rabbeinu Bechaye says that at first glance it looks like a stira. It looks like Rabbi Yochanan's coming along and saying, Rabbi Yehuda, I don't know what you're talking about. Trust me, I knew that guy. I knew that kid. He was a real Ben Sorer Mora. I sat on his kever when they killed him. But Rabbeinu Bechaye says, no. That's not pshat. Rather, they're not arguing at all. The psukim are talking about a halachic Ben Sorer Umora, someone who really qualifies to be this wayward child. Rabbi Yochanan's coming along and saying, I never saw like a real live Ben Sorer Umora, but I saw some pretty bad people. I saw a kid who really went off the derech. I saw a kid who really went on a bad way. Not that he was a Ben Sorer Umora. We're using it like they used to tell me, you're a Ben Sorer. They're using it as a melitza, as some type of nickname. I saw once a Ben Sorer Umora. But I'd like to say that maybe Rabbi Yochanan's coming to teach us something very, very deep. That Rabbi Yehuda comes along and says, Lo haya v'lo niyeh. It'll never be that there's such a kid, such a bad kid, a Ben Sorer Umora, someone who has gone off the way. Rabbi Yochanan's coming along and not saying, halachically, you're right or you're wrong, or I'm arguing or I'm agreeing, whatever it may be. I think this is what Rabbi Yochanan's saying. Don't say that just because the halachas of Ben Sorer Umora, lo haya v'lo yiyeh, don't say that just because we're not going to take the kid and stone him, that a kid can't get that bad. You could have a person with such bad midos. You could have a person you could see as a child that they have certain things about them that, you know what, they're not going to end up in a great place. Don't think that once Rabbi Yehuda paskins, lo haya v'lo yiyeh, that there will never be a kid who reaches such a bad place that'll get involved in such bad things. We don't need that drasha because, unfortunately, we know a lot of people. We've got friends, we've got family members, we've got people down the block, we've got lots of people in our lives who we saw make bad decisions in life. They ended up on not the greatest path. They ended up doing not such great things. So Rabbi Yochanan comes along and says, don't think that lo haya v'lo yiyeh, that you'll have a child who exhibits these bad midos, who exhibits these bad character traits, and it's not going to lead somewhere really, really bad. Ani ra'isi v'yoshati al kivra. I saw what happens when the chinuch goes wrong. Now, what is the nekuda, though? Because when we talk about chinuch, it's very complicated. There's so many different elements that go into the chinuch of a child. What is it about the Ben Sorer Umora that can teach us how to prevent what happened with Rabbi Yochanan? How our children or the children around us won't become this person who, maybe they're not the halachic Ben Sorer Umora, but one day, something bad's going to happen with them. So if you look into the Parsha of Ben Sorer Umora, what he did is not as much the problem as what his chalomos were, as what his aspirations were as a child for what he could be that labeled him a Ben Sorer Umora. So you look into Chazal, they tell you that what was this child doing? He was trying and going and getting meat and stealing meat and wine, and he was going into his father's wallet and taking some money. He was going to go after a life of money, a life of meat, a life of wine, a life of luxury. He was going after this life of absolute indulging in his taivas, absolute indulgence in olam hazeh. And that comes at a young age. It comes from a child looking around at the world around them. They go and they see, what are my chalomos? What are my dreams? What do I want to become? So let me go look at the different things I'm involved in. The movies I'm watching, the music I'm listening to, the people around me, the ads in the paper, the shows on TV, whatever it may be. I look around and I see a life, even as a child, of what society puts forth for me, for what I should want, for what I should go after. That's the Ben Sorer Umora. It's not that he did anything. It's that his chalomos, it's that his dreams, his aspirations were one of a life that wasn't so kadosh, that wasn't so olam haba oriented. So how do we fix that? Because look around. We're living in olam hazeh. We're living in a time where you go out into the street and you see lots of chalomos of what our life could look like. You see lots of advertisements of what our dreams should be for what our lives and what our kids' lives should look like. So we just started saying LeDavid Hashem Ori V'Yishi. And one of the most famous psukim from that parak of Tehillim is Achas Sha'alti Meis Hashem Oso Avakesh Shivti Beveis Hashem Kol Yemei Chayai. That there's one thing I asked, and that's what I'll ask now. Please let me, Hashem, rest in your home forever and ever. Shivti Beveis Hashem Kol Yemei Chayai. So the Chafetz Chaim asks the question that when you look at the language in the pasuk, it's very strange. Achas sho'alti meis Hashem, oso avokesh. There's one thing I asked, and that's what I'm going to ask. Please, Hashem, shivti beveis Hashem. The pasuk could have just said, shivti beveis Hashem kol yemei chayai. It would be a wonderful, beautiful pasuk. I'm sure we'd still sing songs about it. And yet, there's this preface to the pasuk. Achas sho'alti, oso avokesh. Ask the Chafetz Chaim, what is going on? What's this preamble to this wonderful line of shivti beveis Hashem that's needed in the pasuk? There's one thing I asked, there's one thing I will ask. So the Chafetz Chaim answers. He says that in our lives, our chalomos are mischadish b'chol yom, b'chol dor v'dor, whatever it may be, whatever stage we're at in life, our dreams always change. When we're a kid, we want one thing, and then we get a little bit older, we want something different. We get a little bit older, we want different things. Our chalomos, our dreams, our aspirations are constantly changing, constantly moving. There's a famous video. It was actually made into a book called The Last Lecture. Anyone here ever read The Last Lecture? By Randy Pausch. It's a famous book. He was a professor who was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And he gave this last lecture. When he talks about his life, he talks about his hopes as a child. And I remember hearing someone speak about this one time. And when you look at what he was talking about, what his dreams were as a child, he was a 40-something-year-old man chasing the dreams that he had as an 8-year-old. He wanted to play center field for the Yankees. And as a 40-year-old man in his last years of his life, he was trying to make those dreams come true. He wanted to go to Disney World and do all these random things. And I remember hearing one of my Rebbeim speak about this lecture, and he said, how sad is that? That a person you have in their 40s who has the same dreams, the same chalomos, the same aspirations that they had when they were an 8-year-old kid. Dreams are meant to be updated. Dreams are meant to be, with the times, wherever you are at in your life. They're supposed to be mischadish. But says the Chafetz Chaim, David HaMelech is teaching us a very, very important lesson. That even though our chalomos, even though our dreams are meant to be renewed, generation after generation, wherever we may find ourselves, there's one dream that needs to stay constant. Achas sha'alti meis Hashem, oso avokesh. There's one thing I dreamt of as a child when I was a shepherd, David HaMelech is saying, and it's the exact same dream I have when I'm a king with all the riches. Shivti beveis Hashem kol yemei chayai. There are many things that are updated in our life, many dreams, hopes, aspirations that are constantly changing. The Chafetz Chaim said, Achas sha'alti meis Hashem, oso avokesh. There's one thing that needs to be a constant in our lives, and that is to have that relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom. So we asked before, what is it about the Ben Sorer Umorah? He didn't do anything, but rather, it's the chalomos that the child has. It's the chalomos, it's the dreams, it's the hopes and aspirations that a kid has for a life of basar, a life of yayin, a life of kasef, a life filled with taivos, a life filled with all these wonderful dimyonos of what we could be. And you know what Rabbi Yochanan says? You see a kid like that, you know what? He might not get skila, but I'm telling you, he's going to end up in a bad way. I'm telling you, he's not going to be the big Talmid Chacham you're dreaming of. You have a kid who has those chalomos, those aspirations, those dreams as a child, it's not going to end up well. So what can we do about it? What we can do is, in some way, in some small way, we can try and inject into our children, inject into the members of our family, into the members of society, that whatever their chalomos are, there always needs to be one constant. And that is, Shivti b'veis Hashem kol yemei chayai. The Ben Sorer Umorah didn't do anything. He wasn't chayav. It's all because of where he wanted to be. So if we teach our children, if we can be mechanich the people around us, that in some way become shaykh to tefillah, become shaykh to Torah, become shaykh to chesed, have some element in your life, even as a child, it starts at such a young age, to want to be close to Hashem, to want to have that relationship. If you don't do that, if a kid wakes up day after day, and all he knows of, all his dreams and aspirations are only those of what he sees around him, what he sees on the ads, what he sees in a movie, what he sees hears in a song, sees on a show, whatever it may be, if they're not taught from a young age that this chalom, this dream, this she'ela needs to be a constant in their lives, then Rabbi Yochanan's saying, I'm telling you, it's not going to end well. So hopefully, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the siyata d'shmaya. The chinuch is never over. However old your children are, however old the people in your family are, it's never over. We need to constantly feel that we have this chalom. We have to constantly feel that in our lives, That what we're showing our children, what we're showing the people around us is that we have this bakasha, we have the she'ela. Acha sha'alti meis Hashem, oso avakesh. Shivti beveis Hashem kol yemei chayai. Let us sit in your palace, the Rebbeinu Shalom, for the rest of our lives. And hopefully, through us wanting that, through us dreaming of that, through us aspiring to be people who are sitting in the house of Hashem, it'll spill over to our children, it'll spill over to the people around us, that hopefully we'll be able to be Mekayim, the real din, that a ben Sorah Moreh lo haya v'lo yeh.